please gather now or don't come at all?
Oh.
Right on, Gary.
Gary?
Don't hold back.
That's your happy face, is it?
Don't sugarcoat it.
You can do what you want. I'm just giving you your options, that's all.
Okay.
Come up nice and close. Everybody, this is Stephanie. Stephanie, this is everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Hey.
Got my name already?
I'm Stephanie Kubilis. I'm an interpretive coach here at Denali, and I work for Doyon Aramark just like your driver guides do. We agree with Park Service that when we do cultural presentations, we like to use cultural interpreters. We have them on staff. Occasionally something happens and they have to go back to their village, and that's when I will step in and do a little bit of interpretation. Now, the Athabaskan people are actually a branch of the Navajo Nation, so they are Indians. They are not Eskimos, and I am not Athabaskan. Full disclosure. I'm going to talk a little bit about how they theoretically arrived here. So I'm going to go back 10 or 15,000 years ago. When our planet was at a time of extreme glaciation. That means that most of the water on our planet was locked up in the form of glaciers and ice shields. And that meant that sea level dropped about 300 feet. To the west of us is a body of water we now know of as the Bering Sea. At that time it was a subcontinent we call Beringia. It was rolling hills, grassland, and steppe. It had plants growing on it. Animals moved out into it and grazed in it. People followed the animals and the plants to harvest both of them. You may have heard it called the Bering Land Bridge. Have you? Okay. What do you think of when I say bridge? Do you get an image of a constructed thing? You know, it connects, it goes over water, and it has an opening day. So I've got this silly image in my mind of all these mammoths and mastodons standing on the Siberian coastline going, hey, the bridge is open, let's go to Alaska. And it really wasn't like that. It happened over thousands of years, and there were several periods of freezing and thawing, so there were several different opportunities for animals and people to migrate into what we know of as Alaska. Now, once they arrived here, they were confronted to the east by a great big shield of ice, and it wasn't until things began to thaw out that they were able to move south. So there was migration from the interior into what we now know of as the southwest United States, but there was also migration from the south into the interior. The end result is a group of people that have been here for about 10,000 years. They call themselves the Dina, the people. We know them as Athabaskans. They live a subsistence lifestyle now, as they always have, which means they are hunter-gatherers. And for them, their most valuable animal is moose. A full-grown moose can yield about 1,200 pounds of meat, fur, tendons and sinews, bones, antlers, and all of those parts were traditionally used. Antlers were used as partially to build with or to make utensils with or weaponry. Tendons and sinews were used for rope and lashing things. And so of all those different parts, what do you think is probably the most valuable part of a moose?
Meat.
The hide. If you're subsisting, it's also the meat, but they used both. They would make semi-subterranean shelters, which were somewhat dug out, and then they would put a roof structure over it and cover that structure with the skins, and then cover that with mosses or sod for insulation. They also used the skins for clothing, for boots, things like that. But there's also the meat, a whole lot of meat on a moose. Now, one of the problems with that meat is that it's very, very lean. It's so lean that a diet of just moose meat can lead to starvation because it doesn't have enough fat to keep your body heat up in the extreme cold. So they had to supplement that with bear fat, beaver fat, salmon oil if they could get it. There's no salmon right here. And one other part of the moose, which you probably don't think of as very valuable, but that's their legs. Now, there's not a lot of meat on a moose leg, but those bones have the marrow in them. And they would cut that up and cook a broth out of that to get that marrow into the broth because it's very fatty. Even today, a pot of moose leg soup is one of the most prized things that they have, and my Athabaskan friends will take a piece of that moose leg and rip that little piece of meat off of it, slather it with mayonnaise, more fat, and eat it that way. And then when they're done doing that, they have this luscious broth that's very nutritious that they give to the elders and to the sick. Now, even today, the Athabaskans have some challenges. Their villages are mostly built on rivers, but there aren't roads connecting them to one another. So everything has to come in and out by air, if the weather permits it, by water, if the river is navigable, or in the wintertime when the rivers are frozen, by dog sled or snow machine or on foot. But they've also become modernized. So they have electricity, they have running water, they're connected to the web just like everybody else. They've got propane stoves, they drive snow machines, they use chainsaws, and all of those things require fuel, and fuel requires money. And there's not a lot of economic opportunity in a lot of these villages. So frequently, someone from each family will, from each village will leave and go to town to work, to send money home to their family to help support subsistence. But a lot of the villages only have a few dozen people in them. And if a third of your able-bodied workforce is away, that significantly impacts who's going to be there to do the hunting and the berry picking and the food processing. So frequently for these different seasons, people will leave their jobs and go back to their villages. And this allows them to reconnect with family and friends, but to also connect with a subsistence tradition that goes back hundreds of generations. So that when they sit down to share a big pot of moose leg soup, they're not just eating something nutritious, they're eating history, and it nourishes the soul of the village. And as you all continue your journey through Alaska and marvel at this rugged landscape and weather that can change from minute to minute and mile to mile, imagine what it would have been like to live here 10,000 years ago without the benefit of warm clothes and shoes, electricity to light up a winter that's 9 months long and dark, running water. How about a nice warm hotel room and a hot shower to go back to? The Athabaskans have demonstrated a tenacity to not only survive, but to thrive in one of our planet's most extreme environments, and a flexibility to take the best of the 21st century and to weave that into those traditions in their lives. And that's something we really have to admire about them as a people. Well, I want to thank you all for getting off the bus and coming out here to have a little bit of an Alaska experience, and invite you to take a look around and breathe this really nice fresh air. As they say in Athabaskan, Anabasi. Thank you.
Thank you.